Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my April reading wrap up for you. I had a really interesting month in the month of April. I had a couple of books that I actually ended up DNFing, one permanently. I rarely DNF, so this is something, different for me. I also miserably failed at one of the reading events in the month of April. It was a big old mix of things, and so yeah, I'm not sure why I struggled so much in the month of April. I also had a five-star read, a couple five-star reads, and then I had at least one-star read that I did finish, but it wasn't very good. So yeah, interesting mix, very interesting mix. But what I thought I would do is start with the books that I actually did finish in the month of April. Many of these I've already talked about, so I'll just go over them briefly here. The first one is, of course, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. This was my 1001 book club pick for the month of April. This didn't end up being one of my favorites. However, I did like it. Up until I think around the last quarter of the book. I was really enjoying how the story was told. I feel like I may need to reread this at some point when I've read a bit more of his work, and it may rise in my ratings later. And I'm very, very glad that I read it. I'm very encouraged to read more Salman Rushdie now and see what other books of his are like. And I'm encouraged that I'll actually be able to make it through. He's not on top author list. He's not on the most difficult author list. He's just kind of somewhere upper end, I'd say. But my first book was Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie. The other book that I did manage to finish in the month of April for my 1001 book club pick, my 1001 book countdown. I'm doing well today. For my 1001 book countdown was Crime and Punishment by Dostoyevsky. This was a buddy read with Alice at Alice in the Giant Bookshelf and Gemma at Gemma Books. I think I'm the only one who's actually finished it so far. I know they're still working on it. I just wanted to get through it in the month. So kind of a bad buddy reader that I kept pushing forward without my buddy readers. I'm so sorry. But I really wanted to finish this particular one. This one is actually now my favorite Dostoyevsky. Now, granted, I've only read two. I have read The Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment. This one, the big thing with this one is in the middle, it can drag. And I had to get through the middle to get to the end of it, and the end of it was a lot happened more towards the end of the book. So I do have a video all about this one as well for you. I ended up picking up a book that wasn't on my TBR, but was on my 1001 book countdown, which was Amsterdam by Ian McEwan. And that one ended up being not a great book, but short. Wanted to get another book off of the countdown, and it was on my 2023 list. Very, very happy that I finished that one and that it was as short as it was. After that, I go on to my projects. So out of my projects, the first one that I have is Try a New Author project, which I had picked You by Caroline Kepnes. I don't have the book here for some reason. I think it might be in the car. I took this to Whistler with me when I went, and I've talked about it a little bit in my Whistler reading vlog. This is the story of Joel Goldberg, who is a psychopath and is stalking this woman, and you are always in his head. If you like a book from a psychopath's perspective, this is a great one. I think it had a lot to it. I don't know that I enjoyed being in his head. It did remind me quite a bit of a book called The Collector by John Fowles, who is also the author of The French Lieutenant's Woman, I believe, as a kind of a more famous one. And it had shades of that in it, which I thought was really interesting as well. But yeah, I don't know if I'm going to go on and read more of the You series, but I'm so glad I read it. I wouldn't say it was, I'd say it's kind of in the middle range of the rankings for me, but I'm very, very glad that I actually read it. All right, for my subscriber favorites project, I have so many projects right now. For my subscriber favorites project, it was Say Nothing, a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland by Patrick Radden Keefe. This book was phenomenal. I did this as a buddy read with Shelley Swearingen and my friend Sonia, and this was a favorite of Fraser Simon from Springboard Thought. That's why it got put on my subscriber favorite list for this year. And this one actually also qualified for PeopleApril, which I'm very glad it did, and you'll see why later. But this is the story of the time in Ireland commonly referred to as the Troubles, and it was brutal. Just the violence that was perpetrated across all of the different religious groups, and it was captivating. And there were profiles of individual people, and there's one person in particular, the very start of the book starts with someone who is kidnapped or who is taken away from her home, never to be seen again. And it was heart-wrenching. She had 10 children. And going through all of that and all of the reasoning why. This person on the cover is also featured throughout the book quite a bit. But I really, really like this. Actually makes me want to read Trespasses, which I also know is set in the Troubles time period. But this one I would highly recommend even if you're not interested in the history of Northern Ireland. It's got so many interesting people in it and so much history in it. It also has some things about hunger strikes, though, which were really difficult to read, about forced feeding. It's pretty brutal in places, but so incredibly well done. This is the second book that I've read by Patrick Radden Keefe. I've read Empire of Pain as well, and that was one of my top reads. I read it for the BookTube Prize last year, but such a good book. Highly, highly recommend. This one was a 5-star, an easy 5-star, no second thinking about this particular one. I definitely pick this one up if you're interested because, it is so good. I just am so impressed with Patrick Radden Keefe's writing and this particular topic. I'd still say I like Empire of Pain a little bit better just because I felt like more in touch with that topic, and this one was I'm more removed from it. But yeah, very, very good, very, very good book. All right. After that, I have buddy reads. I have a buddy read with Fraser Simon, also with Gemma from Gemma Books and Sarah from Freshly Read Books, and we closed out the end of the Wayfarer series by Becky Chambers by reading this one, The Galaxy and the Ground Within. Oh, I was so sad to see this series, and this is probably my favorite of the 4 books. I loved the premise of this one. There were a couple of characters that had appeared in prior books as well, which in some of them they didn't have a lot of tie across them, but this one did, and I just absolutely loved these characters. I went a little rogue as a buddy reader and finished it ahead. I didn't even wait for people to catch up because I just wanted to finish the book, and I adored it. I loved all the characters. I loved how they interacted. I loved the ending of this one, and it felt like she was saying goodbye to the characters in it. So, so good. A different premise than some of the others that of the first 3 in the series, but like I said, I think this is my favorite. Could you pick this one up in the middle at the end without reading the others? I'd say read the first one and then read this one and you'd probably be okay. You don't have to read the other 2. But so good. I just want to give it a hug. I just want to give it a big hug. Yeah, I really, really liked this particular version of this book. Big hearts. Absolutely adored. Yeah, easy 5-star for me on this one because I just absolutely loved it. Yep. All right. After that, I read The Metabolism Makeover by Megan Hansen. I have a 40-minute vlog with that book. The review, by the way, is only 8 minutes of that video. So if you haven't watched it and you're curious about that book, yeah, you only have to actually commit 8 minutes of your time to hear the review of it. It was a 5-star read. I read this with Amanda at the Reading and Writing Life, and it's the continuation of my Health and Body series, and I got so much from that book. I am still implementing things that I found in that book. So much in it that didn't have necessarily to do with eating. It had to do with movement and stress management and sleep and things that you can do to help your metabolism. I just really appreciated it quite a bit. So for me, that one was also an easy 5-star read. Our tackle spin ended up being the prompt. There were 2 different prompts. The one I chose to do was read a book by an author that you've read before, and so I ended up picking up Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This is also in my Whistler reading vlog. I was able to read this while I was up there, so I am doing really well on the TBR tackle spins, which are hosted by Jill at the Book Bully and Sarah at Freshly Read Books. And this one I talked about already. I found it a little confusing. I feel like it's a book I need to read again to understand, but I do really like Emily St. John Mandel. The other book I had read was Station 11. I do want to read The Glass Hotel now, especially because I know there's characters that overlap. So Maybe I'll reread this again at some point and then it will make more sense to me. I'm hoping. All right. And then we talk about the first event, which was PeopleApril. I read Say Nothing, which wasn't part of my PeopleApril planned TBR. It wasn't. The group read was The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. I didn't even open it. I mean, I feel so bad. This is such a cool event, and I just didn't even get to it. I was on the Voxer group, and I wanted to, but I was reading so much nonfiction for the BookTube Prize that I just couldn't pick up another book. And I'm sad to say that the rest of my PeopleApril possibilities went the same way. I had I Am Malala, didn't even pick it up. I had Becoming by Michelle Obama. I had an Alan Cumming book. I had Cleopatra by Stacy Shiff as possibilities. I did not touch a single one of them. This is probably the worst participation kind of I've ever had in a reading event. And it was such a great reading event that was hosted by Elizabeth over at Bookins and Books and Roz at Scala-Dandling about the books. And I am just so sorry. I ran out of time. Yeah, my goodness. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. The other reading event that I participated in, or that I wanted to participate in, was transgirlapril, which is hosted by Keefe over at Say Keefe. And this particular one I had some success with because I was able to read Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. And this book was really fascinating. The parts that I loved. And then there was this weird space component that was like, what is going on here? But the basic premise is there is a violin teacher who is basically contracted to deliver souls to hell and has delivered 6 and is looking for her 7th student. The 7th student that she finds is really a phenomenal character in this book, which is where the trans representation comes in. I have to say my favorite parts are the descriptions of her playing music and how freeing it was for that character. It was lovely, absolutely lovely. On kind of the edge of your seat to see what happens to her and whether or not she's going to be delivered to hell, essentially. And the teacher character, I also thought was really, really an interesting character. It was the weird space component that I just was like, why is this here? Because the mystical side of it, of hell and the contract, and that was so good that I felt like I didn't need the other piece of it. I get why it was there at the end of the book, but yeah, it wasn't quite a 5-star read, but the parts I loved, I absolutely adored. Yeah, it was just that weird space component in there that I was like, I don't really understand that. But Light from Uncommon Stars, great pick for transgirlapril. And unfortunately, that's where the good news ends on transgirlapril. I had the Pretty Star kind of as a possibility in there, and that did not happen. I didn't even open it. It's on the bookshelf over there. I didn't even bring it out. And then I have my first of 2 DNFs for the month. And this one is a permanent DNF, and I do feel bad because I know Keefe had read this and had said, and that's why I ended up buying it originally, was because of Keefe. And I've tried 4 times to read this, and it's just not going to happen. I got farther this time than I've gotten in the past, and I just can't get past the language in it. It's not even the subject matter. I just don't like how things are being discussed, and I just could not get past it. And the book is Manhunt by Gretchen Felker Martin. I just get turned off so fast on this. I think I made it to page 20 this time, and I just could not get to a point where I felt like, okay, I'm really interested in these characters and I really want to keep going with this. I just couldn't. It's going on the permanent DNF, everyone. I just can't. Yeah, I feel bad, but that's the permanent DNF book that I have for my April reading My goodness, this is a rough one. Sorry, I feel really bad, but not going to happen. I'm not even going to try it again. I just know that this is not going to be my kind of book. I don't even know if it's a bad book. It's just not a book for me. If you like horror, maybe this is a good book for you. But for me, yeah, it just didn't work. I just could not get past the language. So, yeah, Manhunt's going on the permanent DNF pile. It hurts to say that. It does. My other DNF was a library book that I got called Your Driver is Waiting by Priya Guns. I got actually over halfway through this book and then ended up putting it aside and DNFing it. Not because it was a bad book, but because I didn't have enough time and I had some other things I needed to be reading and I wasn't loving it. So I just said, I'm just going to put it aside. I'm just going to go put it aside. So yeah, that was the other, just 2 DNFs. I mean, in a single month, that might be a record for me. It might be. The last book that I'm going to talk about is not for an event. It is a buddy read that I did with Jack at Spread Book Joy, Dia at Novel Idea, and Gemma from Gemma Books, and it was Kate Elliott's The Keeper 6. This is a short little novella. Let's see here. So only 100 and something pages long. And unfortunately, this is just another book that didn't quite work. And I think the whole group was aligned on this as well, that it felt like the author was trying to pull in a novel's worth of stuff in 120, 150 page novella. And it just felt like I was dropped into a story like number 2.5 in a series and I needed to understand what had happened before. I actually went and looked up, was this part of a series that I had missed something? And no, it's not. It's just one little contained novella, but it just, so much of it felt like you were being just force-fed information and you were jumping all over the place because the author was trying to get so much condensed in a very short amount of time, and it just wasn't very enjoyable because of that. It's really too bad. I've never read any Kate Elliott before. I understand that there's a couple other full-length books that are better than this particular one, but yeah, this one just didn't work, unfortunately. So yeah, The Keeper 6, I wish it was a full-length novel because there was a lot of potential in the story, in the characters, but the characters I really wanted to spend more time with, I didn't get a lot of time with, and then the ending was just strange. So yeah, just a little strange. But that's my April reading. Poor participation in an event, 2 DNFs. I'm just like, my goodness, what happened to me in April? I still feel like I read quite a bit. I mean, I read a lot for the BookTube Prize, but my books for events and things just did not come about this month. Yeah. I don't know how that bodes for May, because if you've watched my May TBR, you know I have a lot of books on my May TBR, but I'm okay. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them. I'm really curious. And yeah, again, I apologize for not being able to fully participate in some of the events that I wanted to this month. It just didn't happen. But as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.